Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka Mono Bluetron, back again with another episode of 10-Minute Testing. Well, we did it, folks. We survived every single Firewall Dragon format, and I look forward to losing to such interesting and novel decks as Rongo Turbo. Anyway, as always, I'm out here on day one playing a card I haven't been able to for a while, alongside a suite of monsters that I think are finally reasonably powered enough to see consistent play. I implore you to check this out. So here's the deck, and Pacifist, old friend, it truly has been too long. As always, I'll give you a little bit of background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and as always, the card by card. So firstly, for those of you that don't know, Pacifist the Phantasm City is my favorite card. Pacifist punishes your opponent for doing, well, anything by summoning tokens and adding removal spells to your hand. If your opponent ends on a suboptimal board, you can use their equip spells and Phantasm Spiral Dragon to cut your opponent's life short. Unfortunately, time has not been particularly kind to the strategy. The OTK versions are too disruptible, and the control versions don't mount enough pressure to justify playing them. It's a strategy that's always in need of something else to do, but since all effect monsters turn off the tribal traps, and the field spell turns off all effect monsters, it can be hard to find anything worth playing alongside our Dark Mother, the Ocean. Enter Mekk-Knights. Now these bad boys have a couple of things going for them that supplements Pacifist perfectly. Firstly, they excel going second, and since the deck is otherwise reactive traps, it's nice to have something that can clean up boards. Secondly, their flagship monster, Mekk-Knight Purple, is amazing. He can tag out in order to make the traps that care about normal monsters live, and his return doesn't count as a special summon, and therefore doesn't turn off Pacifists. Finally, in the meme of a lifetime, Mekk-Knight Avram is maybe the best card in the deck. He's exceptionally searchable, triggers Pacifist, and when paired with World Legacy's memory, nets you 2 Pacifist searches, even if your opponent refuses to do anything but look at you angrily. As a whole, the strategy affords Pacifists some exceptional linear play. Linking up to Morningstar both resets the token on board and affords the deck additional negation, which is critical when playing against decks that are attempting to +9 every turn. Looking at you, Sky Striker. So with that, let's get into the card by card. First, we've got 2 Mekk-Knight Avram, followed by 2 Mekk-Knight Purple, 2 Mekk-Knight Blue, 1 Mekk-Knight Red, and 1 Shifty Boy. We're also playing 3 Ash Blossom, followed by spells, 2 Desires, don't flame me in the comments, 2 Terraforming, 2 World Legacy Memories, and 3 Pacifist the Phantasm City. For traps, we're on 2 Phantasm Spiral Battle and 1 Phantasm Spiral Power. You're never going to need more than 3 of these anyway. 3 Infinite Impermanence, 3 Goes and Match, 3 Solemn Strike, 2 Heavy Storm Duster, the searchable World Legacy Secret, and a suite of powerful one-ofs: Judgment, Warning, Skill Drain, Macro, and Imperial Order. In the extra, we've got some cards that'll be good based on what's in our side: Chimera Tech, Omega, Dante, Isolde, and Kagari, followed by Boral Sword, Spectrum Supreme, Nightmares Unicorn, Phoenix, and Cerberus, Mermaid as well, Morningstar, Landfoe to cut off effect monsters, though he isn't a normal, a Link Spider, and Linkuriboh. So with that, let's jump into the games. In a 10-minute testing first, our first match is up against a celebrity. That's right, we're playing against 19th President of the United States, Rutherford B. Hayes. He's on Six Samurai Rongo Bongo Turbo, which should not come as a surprise to anyone familiar with the contents of his presidency. We're going first, which is pretty bad because we have 3 Mekk-Knight in our opener. We'll fire off a Pot of Desires. We find a Solemn Strike and an Ash, which should be good enough. Our opponent's going to start by activating 6 Samurai United. That triggers Pacifist. We'll go ahead and get a battle in case we have to pop it. They'll normal summon a Samurai, and knowing they can then summon more, we'll go ahead and pop it now. They'll go for the United. We'll go ahead and negate it with Ash, and they'll then activate Living Fossil to get that Samurai back, special a second one, and go into Isolde. We do have the Solemn Strike set, so that should be the end of their turn. They will pass back to us, and we draw a spell so we can pop off from here. We'll go into a Link Spider, special summon Purple, use Purple's effect to get ourselves Blue, special summon Blue, go into Morningstar, use Morningstar's effect to get Secret, special summon 1 Shifty Boy, get in for 2k and 2400, set that trap and pass it back to our opponent with the token once again available. Our opponent doesn't draw anything particularly good, they'll special copy of Spell Striker and concede. Thanks for the game, Mr. President. Our second match is up against Geist, and our hand is a little bit better. I don't like to see multiple copies of Pacifist, but I do like to see multiple copies of cards that actually do something. We're going to set this copy of Pacifist, set 2 cards, and pass it back to our opponent. Our opponent draws 4 turn. Meluseek, always. We're not going to negate the effect of Meluseek to destroy a card so long as they target Pacifist, but we will Solemn Strike the Grave effect so they can't pop off with a multi-faker. I feel pretty good about this because we have another Pacifist in hand. Of course, we'll use this World Legacy's memory at the end phase. Unfortunately, we don't get the search, but I think that's fine, worth it to bluff. We're going to normal summon this copy of Avram after Ash Blossoming the personnel spoofing. God, that feels so good. And then we're going to get ourselves a copy of Phantasm Spiral Battle. Attack in. They decline to use the effect of Linkuriboh because it doesn't happen in the damage step. so we would otherwise get a token. They're going to go ahead and activate Materialization, then Chain Link 2, shuffle it back. I was kind of hoping for a 2-for-1 with this personnel spoofing, but I'll settle for a 1-for-1. They'll go into a Meluseek. We're going to get Phantasm Spiral power from deck. When you can get power, I recommend you do, because it's generally the less powerful of the two traps. They're then going to go for Linkuriboh, so Meluseek gets a Multi-Faker. That set card is a copy of Mind Crush. So long as we don't ever search a card, we should be fine. Seems easy in Mech Knight. They're going to Valor our Morningstar. Okay, that's probably good for us. We'll go into Mech Knight Purple, get in for 2,500 points of damage, and then pass it back to our opponent. That Desires is looking a little bit tasty, and after they draw the Silk, they can now fire it off with no risk. They find a Mind Crush and a Reckless Greed. That Pacifist is going to get us a battle, but unfortunately that Mind Crush is now live. They'll go ahead and get that Multi-Faker. We will tag out with our copy of Purple because I don't want it getting Silked. Of course, he does not banish for cost. They'll then get a Conquieri, negating the effect of our Morningstar, returning it with his copy of Silk, and passing it back. Things are looking okay. They're going to Mind Crush our Blue Sky. We get back Purple. We're going to attack the Silquidius. They'll use Conquieri to negate that attack and negate the face-up effect of Purple. They'll Silk targeting the token, but that actually gives us a token because, of course, it's not counted as a special summon when Purple returns. Because of that, we get to clear the entire board. They draw, and it's a Solemn Strike. Not particularly good when we already have something on board. They find a Solemn Strike, oh my god, and a copy of Heavy Dust Storm, another card that really does nothing on this board state. They're going to set 3, go into Kadolga, use Meluseek to get a copy of Marionetter, use Marionetter's effect to get a Materialization, then use Marionetter one more time to get back this Meluseek. They'll be able to wipe our board, but provided we're able to resolve the return of Purple, we should be able to win from this position. We do so, and we find, wow, a Pot of Desires. We'll draw a couple of cards, they will Linkuriboh in response, but this should be the end of the game. As long as we can search a couple of Mech Knights we can get in for lethal, we'll get Blue Sky, and we find ourselves an Avram, a Cobalt, and they'll concede. Our third match is up against Dark Link. The sole survivor of the Link spam ban list, this deck attempts to leverage the Warrior toolbox in order to make Isolde, Gumblar Dragon, Bardiche, and or Rongo Nimiad. We have an excellent hand and we're going first, so this should play out in our favor. We're going to activate Terraforming to find a Pacifist, activate Pot of Desires, finding a trap and a second copy of Ash Blossom, then pass it back to our opponent. Our opponent's going to start by special summoning a Junk Forward, then using Dark Grepher's effect, we're going to Ash Blossom it. They will Called by the Grave, but of course we have an Infinite Transient set as well, so we'll activate that. Afterwards, we're going to go ahead and get a token from Pacifist to Phantasm City, and a Phantasm Spiral Battle to our hand. They'll go into Isolde, we'll activate Solemn Warning. They have a copy of Hornet Bit remaining, but ooh, that's the wrong zone, friendo. Our last match is unsurprisingly a best-of-3 versus meta. Our opponent is on Sky Striker, poised to be the best deck in the upcoming formats. Our grip is pretty good. We have one of our Silver Bullets, Skill Drain, which should be enough, but our opponent's is quite good as well. We're going to start by setting 2 cards and activating Pacifist Phantasm City, then passing it back to our opponent. Once again, their grip is massive. They'll start with a copy of Foolish Burial Goods, sending a copy of Metal Fuzz Fusion. That's going to net us a token, and a copy of Phantasm Spiral Battle to our hand. They'll Reinforcement of the Army for a copy of Ray going into Hayate. When they go to attack, we'll flip up the Skill Drain so they can't send anything, and they'll activate Multi-Roll, Area 0, trying to find something, and oh god, easy, nothing there. They'll activate Metal Fuzz Fusion to get themselves a copy of Shark, then Terraforming for a second copy of Area 0. We will pop this Multi-Roll and End Step, and god, that feels good to say. We're going to Special Summon this Purple, and then Special Summon this Blue as well. Unfortunately, we can't add anything, but that's probably a small price to pay for being able to eat Ray and Hayate. We get in for 2,500 points of damage and reset the copy of Token so we can pass it back to our opponent. Our opponent's going to activate Foolish Burial Goods number 2 to get themselves a Metal Fuzz Fusion. That's going to get us the token as well. What do they find off the Metal Fuzz Fusion? Let's see, but an evenly matched. And they find an Engage off of the Area 0. That's really bad because, of course, the only card that can beat us at this point is Afterburner. They will target Purple. Purple, of course, does not tag out for cost, so can't resolve under Skill Drain. They'll pop everything necessary and pop it back to us. We should be able to win from this position, provided they don't have exactly Widow Anchor, and well, there's Widow Anchor, so it looks like we may not be winning this one. We'll pass it back to our opponent, and they will, interestingly, evenly matched for 3 here. It does get to banish a lot of our critical cards. We do get a Pacifist Phantasm City activation, but we don't get the search because of the Ash Blossom. They, of course, afterwards have an Engage they ripped off the top. Excellent. That should be the end of the game. They're going to find a Multi-Roll. They'll normal summon a Ray, go into a Kagari. We do have the Infinite Impermanence for the Kagari, but we're going to have to find something absolutely amazing off the top to beat Shizuku plus Multi-Roll. They'll go ahead and activate Shizuku, and then they'll activate Multi-Roll to set this copy of Widow Anchor. We find Terraforming, so we'll scoop them up. Our second match should go a little smoother. We did find Gozen Match, which is probably the most important card in our deck against Sky Striker. It's very difficult for them to out. We haven't found Pacifist, so we'll fire off a Pot of Desires. We don't find it, so we'll pass it back to our opponent. Unfortunately, after flipping Gozen Match, we find our opponent has an evenly matched. We're going to thin our deck a little bit because we don't want to be drawing this Avram that's left in there, and then they'll activate Terraforming, finding an Area 0, a multi-roll. Things are not looking good. They're looking a little bit better after they whiff this activation, but not a lot to be happy about here. We need a spell or trap, and of course we find a blue, probably the last remaining Mekk-Knight in our deck. They draw an Ash Blossom, which is similarly bad. They will Area 0 one more time, and oh, who said this deck was oppressive? Just whiff all your activations. We draw, and finally we find a Solemn Strike. We'll set that special summon a purple, use purple's effect. Our opponent will chain a Shared Ride. That's going to net them one draw, but that's probably fine. We'll special a Cobalt Depths, and then special a Red Moon as well. We'll attack directly for 2300 and 2400, getting the beats on, and hopefully our opponent can't do anything about it. On their turn, they're going to activate this copy of Area 0, and oh, what do they find? But Engage. Ugh, Engage is so strong. They'll find Afterburner, probably the last card we're scared of once again. But since they only set a card, we still should be able to do this, provided they can't out multiple monsters. We'll normal summon an Avram and go to battle phase, and they'll concede. Alright, so it's time for game 3, and unfortunately we are going second. Our hand isn't fantastic. Phantasm Spiral Power never is, but our opponent's isn't either, so we might be able to make this work. They're going to start by activating Upstart Goblin. Let's see what they find, and it's Engage. As always, they'll go ahead and activate this copy of Area 0, targeting this set card, and they find a second Engage. Wow, must be nice. That destroys their copy of Metal Foes Fusion. They'll get themselves a multi-roll and sack into another one. They'll use Kagari's effect. We will infinite and permanent, so we don't have to deal with about 8 engages this turn instead of 4. They'll go into Shizuku, and then in the end step do the Shizuku Shuffle with a copy of Widow Anchor, and set that sucker back. We're going to start by activating Pacifist the Phantasm City, and end by setting 4 cards and hoping for the best. Our opponent draws into another field spell. They'll go into Hayate, we'll Solemn Strike it. That's step 1 of the plan. We now have to keep Ray off the field, but they draw into a Twin Twister, so unfortunately that's not going to work. They'll then use Area 0's effect to get Ray. We'll Heavy Dust Storm the 2 cards that we know are set, and they'll attack directly. We'll activate this copy of Solemn Warning when they go to tag out. Now the game states simplified. Unfortunately, our opponent has a Sylvan Library up, so we kind of have to hope for the best, and hope that they keep whiffing as they did right there. We draw into... Ash Blossom is so bad right now. We'll pass it back to our opponent. They draw into a Shared Ride, which is similarly bad because we're doing nothing. Once again, Area 0 not particularly whiffing, but not finding anything particularly good either. We draw into a copy of Skill Drain, and okay, we might be able to do this, provided they don't ever find Afterburner. They're going to activate this copy of Reinforcement of the Army. We'll Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. That's pretty good. They're then going to use Area 0 on this Hercules base, and they do find a Sky Striker spell, but Eagle Booster isn't doing a whole lot for them right now. They'll shuffle a bunch of cards back with this Hercules base and pass it back to us. We find a Terraforming, so we could maybe do this. Our opponent's going to chain a Shared Ride, so they draw a card, but I'm not too beat up about it. That card is Engage, but our opponent does something incredibly smart here. They start attacking directly with Ray. They're not ever going to give us a chance to activate Pacifist the Phantasm City's effect. We draw into a Blue Sky, we'll special summon that. They will chain Ray's effect, then chain Widow Anchor. We will chain Skill Drain to negate our own monster, so they can't take it. They'll go into a Kagari, and then of course Azure Sky fails to resolve. We'll get in for 500, they'll use Ray to get Ray back out, and we'll pass it back to our opponent. Unfortunately now, of course, because our Pacifist Phantasm City does almost nothing, this startup Engage is extremely live. We'll get a token at the very least, but they'll Ash Blossom our search. Ugh, how painful. Before activating Afterburner, destroying our Skill Drain, and this is about the end of the game. They'll get in directly, we'll activate Phantasm Spiral Power, buying us a turn, but they get to go into Kagari, they get to get it back Afterburner, wipe our entire board. It'd have to be something completely astounding off of the top in order to win this game. They're even going to find a Shark Cannon that they can set in case we were playing a Monster Reborn. We find Jack Knight Purple, and they've played around it. So we're back with the deck, and there's a lot to talk about. First, the pros. One is that I think the deck has legs. The Mekk-Knights have always been skirting the edges of playability, and with a format with exceptionally less auto losses for decks that don't assemble a clock, it's probably good enough for rogue play. 2, the Mekk-Knights do an amazing job of shoring up Pacifist's big weakness, its lack of proactive plays. Morningstar is an absolute house, and it's incredible when you get to negate 2 effects in one turn just to add a card that pops a monster as recompense. And 3, you're always going to get a lot of mileage out of Pacifist. People just have no idea what this card does or how it works. And the cons. First, smarter opponents will give you less room to activate things. As you saw in that third game, if your opponent has practice against both halves of your deck, they can easily tunnel into the often lethal line of set up in single zones and don't activate anything. 2, it still has trouble with the massive advantage engine of Sky Striker. In the board, I'd dedicate space to mind controls, anti-spells, and similar side options for that strategy specifically. And 3, occasionally it bricks. Staring down 4 Mekk-Knights is the worst feeling in the world, bar none. All in all, it's definitely an interesting strategy, and with careful tuning and dedicated play, I do think it can hang with the big boys. Just don't expect to do well based on card quality alone. You're going to have to jump through way more hoops for way less reward. Such is the inherent eroticism of the sea. So that's that. Good to be back brewing with vanillas. It feels good for someone with selective illiteracy. If you want to see me play the decks I make on this show on stream, I'm on twitch.tv/monobluetron every Monday night from 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Standard Time. And if you have an idea for a deck or archetype you want to see me explore on a future episode of this show, let me know in the comments section and I'll do my best. Otherwise, I'll see you later.